This will be the final reading from Being Dhamma, Ajahn Chah. It's this section is the final chapter called Teaching Dhamma. And then we'll have one more reading tomorrow. Bonus, yet to be decided. It's all upaya, skillful means. It is as if we're advertising medicine to sell. We have to talk about its effectiveness. Whoever suffers from headaches, whoever has indigestion, then whether or not people will buy is up to them. But we do have to go to the villages and say something, otherwise they won't know about it. It's just skillful means to get people to take a look. Dhamma has no body or substance, but we have to find some way to get people to come to it and understand. We make analogies and comparisons to say that it is like this and like that. It is totally a matter of upaya. The real Dhamma cannot be shown or seen like this. Think about it. No one can really give Dhamma to another. We can only give upaya to help people understand, speaking in ways they can relate to. So where is the Dhamma? You'd better investigate this anew. The Buddha didn't praise those who merely believe others. He praised those who come to know for themselves. This latter kind of knowledge is clear, and when you know in this way, problems and questions come to an end. If you only know because of what someone told you, the questions remain. For example, when you were coming here, you had to ask someone the way to Ban Gaw village and Wat Papong, what the monastery is like, and so forth. But just hearing their answers is not knowing clearly. You know, but not for real. You could spend your whole life thinking about it without knowing until you actually get here. If someone else asks you about Wat Papong, what can you say? Nothing is really clear yet, because you have only heard what others had to say. Your knowledge does not reach the actuality. It hasn't arrived, so there are still questions. When you do arrive and see for yourself, there is nothing more to be puzzled about. You can say what Ban Gaw is like, what Wat Papong is like, what the Ajahn is like. The questions have come to an end because you see for yourself. So the Buddha taught us to meditate and realize for ourselves. Just believing others' words he called foolishness. We may believe the words of others, but we have to investigate and come to believe a second time through really seeing the truth of those words. Like some people, I've often thought about how people like to make merit through offerings these days. It's a popular practice, and people feel good about it. And it is good, true enough. But think about giving up evil. Actually, giving up evil is a bigger thing than the meritorious activity of giving. A thief is unable to stop doing bad deeds, but he might offer food to monks or do some other charitable acts. He might steal from one person, then distribute some of his gains to others and feel good about it. But to get him to give up stealing is not so easy. Making merit and doing evil are of different weight in this way. Anyone can give things, isn't that so? In our culture, it's a deeply ingrained tradition. But giving up evil, well, think about it. A thief won't do that unless he undergoes a genuine transformation. You can consider the matter from this little example. Practicing and living the Dhamma are like that. Listening is not so difficult. Doing is difficult. We need to see and realize through practice, not only through hearing. We have to hear and gain understanding from hearing, but then we have to take it inside to see more clearly, to see a second and a third time. There will be no problems then. We are likely to continuously have doubts and problems precisely because of reading texts. This teacher says this, that one says that. The disciples of the Buddha said this. But what about our own minds? We don't know yet. Yes, Sariputta was good, Moggallana was good, but are we as good as they? Have we gotten down to practicing as they did yet? No, but let me read this first. We might well die first, just reading texts and listening to teachings. Can you really experience the truth of Dhamma from reading a text? Learning about anger from a text isn't the same as knowing anger. One who really sees anger will give it up. But just knowing the word is not real knowing. You can hear the teaching and think, yes, it's probably true, but when you meet situations and have sense contact, you lose control. At that level, you still can't let go. I know, I can't give up. When the time comes to practice, I will let go, but now I can't. The way I see it these days, it's better to go back and make yourself normal. Whoever has faith will come and do it. We don't need to talk about it a lot. We need to practice a lot. If there's a wound, you'd better clean it deep down, all the way, not just on the surface, or you'll end up amputating. It's not that we can just talk about Dhamma and people will see instantly. It isn't like that. Such as with talking about Nibbana, it only brings confusion. People even criticize the Buddha. He knew it perfectly, so why did he speak about it indirectly? Why didn't he show it directly for us to see? There's a problem here. This is not something you can explain for others to know clearly, so he had to speak as he did. Otherwise, we would have to accuse him of being ignorant or unskilled. If it were the case that knowing for oneself would be able to make everyone else understand, why would the Buddha leave us in confusion? It's the same as trying to show colors to someone who is totally blind. What will you tell him about red or yellow or green? Green is like this. Is that sufficient for a blind person? Red is such and such. Will the blind person understand? Yes, you can talk and explain in the greatest detail, but what will he understand from that? What is the reason he is unable to understand? It's only because of his blindness. You can't really be faulted for not explaining it. There's no way to give this to someone else. The Buddha elucidated for people to be able to come to realization by themselves. But people fault the Buddha, saying he was ignorant or unskillful. Okay, if you know it, then explain it to me clearly. It's like the blind person who keeps on asking about colors and keeps grumbling that you aren't doing a good job of explaining. You say, hey, this is yellow. This thing is really a perfect yellow. What's the use? The more you talk, the more confused he is about it. So what's to be done? It would be better to come back to the salient point and ask, what's wrong with your eyes? Let's find a way to restore your sight. Then you won't need to try and explain about red and green and yellow. Otherwise, just trying to point things out with words is a futile exercise and nothing meaningful will result. The darkness of ignorance is much more terrible than being blind. So in the end, it's a matter of practicing. You must do it yourselves. The Dhamma is really only upaya. If you have never been inside the hall here, but I have seen the Buddha statue and other things and feel that you should see them too, I should find a way to get you to come here rather than just telling you about it. I can describe the splendid statue to you, but you may not believe me. So I have to find a way to get you inside, and once you have seen, you will believe. It can be difficult to convince people of anything real if they are self-absorbed and fully trust their own views, and firmly trust their own views. They may say there is no sense or logic to the Dhamma when we try to explain it to them. Having no sense in themselves, they ascribe that to others. So how can we tell them about Dhamma? We can only teach those who will give it a try. Those who will not do anything, who won't practice to find out for themselves, cannot be taught. They are what we call pada parama, or idiots. I guess that's what pada parama means. What kind of person is a pada parama individual? Does it mean someone without schooling? A person can have a doctorate and clearly belong in this category, or it can be someone who has stayed in the woods all their life. Yet the illiterate forest dweller can also have the capacity to understand Dhamma. They can be of the type who sees clearly. It's not always necessary to have a lot of study. People can be highly learned in a number of disciplines and still be hopeless, refusing to trust anyone's words. For all their knowledge, these people can be the hardest type of padaparama. People can be difficult, really. Everyone wants to know easily. University students often come here. They ask, Longpa, what should we do to gain realization quickly? What's the very fastest way? Well, if you're interested in fastest, you don't need to bother at all. Just forget about it. What do you think you will get with this attitude? Some practitioners like to dispute over meditation methods, over precepts, over what tranquility is and what insight is. Don't go arguing with them. I don't argue with people. I do my practice according to what I understand, and what others believe is up to them. Don't make a big deal out of it. I practice the way I do. If you are interested, you may try it. I can't make a law about it. If you are curious to know whether there's something to it, you have to find out for yourself. Otherwise, there's no end to it. Samatha and vipassana, meditating on the rising and falling of the abdomen, Buddho, Dhammo, everyone will go mad, discussing and arguing as to what is the right way to practice, what is the best way. It's excessive, really. This is what some people like. When it comes to practice, they like to ask questions. They have endless questions over the smallest thing. They like to try every meditation method they hear of. It's like there's a fire underneath them, a fire they lit themselves. We tell them, sit in meditation and you can calm the mind. Practicing samadhi makes the mind peaceful. It sounds good, so they try it. They get the idea that as soon as they sit down, they will become tranquil. They sit and try to fix the mind, but it starts running all over, so they say it's a lie, it doesn't work. Yeah, I've tried that, sitting to practice samadhi, but my mind wouldn't stay still. It got really agitated, even worse than if I didn't try to meditate. These meditation people are putting across a lot of deception. Have you heard this? What would you say to them? That kind of thing is simply due to the desires and ignorance of people. It doesn't happen the way they'd like it to. Look at the accounts of the way people practiced, the way they lived in the Buddha's time. It isn't like that now. These days, people just look at books. They memorize things and then start teaching. I don't know where they get their ideas. They go ahead and teach all kinds of mistaken things without knowing what they're doing, not knowing what is correct or what is incorrect. It's because they haven't gained knowledge from within their own minds. When the members of parliament are up for re-election, they all say, I am a good person. I work hard to help all of you. Well, how many years has the populace been voting for these folks? What has come of it? Maybe we've seen a tiny bit of improvement because of them. And the only reason they do anything at all for us is so we'll vote for them. They have the desire to be MPs. If they didn't have the desire, they wouldn't run. They have to have desire as a motivation to do anything. That's how things normally work. Oh, I'm the very best there is. Trust me. Who is the best one, really? Everyone will say they are. But if we examine them thoroughly, will they really be so good? I'm not speaking ill of anyone, but this is the way people are. If it were arhants in that situation, you wouldn't hear them talking like that, stirring up confusion and turmoil. We don't get arhants in parliament. Only worldly people want to be MPs, where they can play their worldly games. How good can you expect them to be? Just as good as they are with their worldly motivation, good within the limits of worldliness. Or should we try to find some arhants to run for parliament? It's the same with medicines. No matter what the medicine, how good can it be? Good within the limits of medicine itself. There are no medicines to stop death. They can alleviate the suffering of illness a little and help us feel better for a while. That's all. Eventually, the Lord of Death is going to take the doctors too. It's like this, so don't make your thinking complicated and expect too much. We seek tranquility, but we have to think correctly. It's mostly a matter of relying on endurance and patience. If we can't bear the difficulties, it all falls apart. We can't take the confinement in the forest, so we want to give up and escape, get out and start talking with people and doing all our old activities again. Those who call themselves Buddhists today, what are they like? I've taken a good look. It doesn't really seem to touch people's hearts. Those we can point to and say their minds are one with the Buddha's way are indeed very few. Some Westerners ask me, Luang Pa, you've done your study and practice and attained knowledge, so why do you still live in the forest? There are few people here. I think they're trying to take me to the slaughterhouse. If you go to the big city, there are many people you can help. You can't accomplish much benefit in the forest, setting a trap, waiting to kill me. If you go to the cities, the places of, quote, progress, unquote, to speak about Dhamma, the people there will think you are mad. The crazy monk has come. The mad monk is here. If you try to talk about anything other than self, other than me and mine, they will say you're crazy. Anyone who talks about things not being self or belonging to a self, they will call insane. So I think those Westerners are trying to trick me, sending me to the slaughter. Most people aren't going to listen. People ask if I teach the foreigners about Nibbana, or what I tell them. I'm only going to get them to become a little more comfortable with themselves. There's no point in talking about selflessness right off the bat. I just instruct them to do what to do. I just instruct them as to what to do. It's like I tell them, you have to put this glass here, leave it here for 2 minutes, and don't pick it up. After 2 minutes, pick it up and put it over there. Do this. But why should I do it? Don't talk about it, just do it. That's good enough. Why do you need to ask? Knowledge will come when you do through doing this. What will happen from doing it then? Don't ask. You came to study with me. Now your responsibility is only to lift up the glass and put it down. Wisdom will come about from this. Practicing for months and years, some reaction and change will take place in the mind. There will be some feeling, some awareness. Then wisdom will appear. The person doesn't need to ask me questions, only do the practice. What's the point of asking about a lot of things? I just teach you about this, and your job is to do it. Pick it up and put it here for 2 minutes, then pick it up and put it over there. By keeping at it, some knowledge will come. Through the arising of awareness, the person will come to know something, but it's necessary to endure. A person who endures must come to realization. When she does, then never mind what kind of teachings we give her. So in my meditation these days, whatever comes about, I just say, this is not certain. That's enough. Good experience, this is not certain. Bad experience, this is not certain. That person is nice, I like him, not certain. That person is really repulsive. This is also not certain. It all comes down to this. These things that are uncertain will not become otherwise. If you take something to be exceedingly good, some problems will come about for you. If you see something as extremely bad, will that help you? If you follow these two ways, you are experiencing the two extremes the Buddha warned about. You have indulgence and self-torment within you. But if you put them both down, good and evil, where will you dwell? When you are not following the ways of good or bad, what is there? It's nothing that can be fixated on and objectively known. If you practice in this way, the realizations will come about. Please think about this. When you see that all things are truly uncertain, what will you try to cling to? You will let go, leaving things to follow their own conditions. If you need to solve problems, you will act to an appropriate degree, not react with elation or depression over them. When you see them all as uncertain, they lose their value. Isn't that so? Uncertain things won't entice you. They will be just like refuse or leftovers. This is trash. That is trash. Who would want them? This is not certain. That is not certain. Why would you grasp at things that aren't certain? What would you want with things that have no value? So the fact of uncertain can forcefully bring you to enter into something that is certain. This is what you need to do. If you do this, I will say without hesitation that you will be able to practice meditation with success. We don't need to study a lot. Living in an ordinary way, we don't need to control the mind too much. When we see that everything is uncertain, we don't accept things through attraction or aversion. We let go. Why would we get involved with uncertain things? We lose the path only by thinking that things are certain. If we don't practice this and instead go asking questions, seeking knowledge from different people, what will we get? Who can speak the words that will cause knowledge to be born within us if we are not practicing correctly? The Buddha was not so ambitious. He taught just a few people at a time. At first, it was the group of 5 ascetics. He didn't teach them a lot. They learned from practice. When a person practices, he has experience, and this experience creates enthusiasm. There will be a happiness for which he is willing to dedicate his life and make great sacrifice. Others cannot understand why he feels like that. They don't have any idea what the person experiences. If he tries to tell them about it, they may get some superficial knowledge from the words, but they can't really relate to the experience. The practitioner alone realizes the fruit. Others cannot see it. If you try to get it only through others' words, you are likely to become discouraged and give up. I feel it is really necessary to work in practice. You don't need to do a lot of complicated thinking about it. Follow the trainings of sila, samadhi, and wisdom. Whatever various teachers may say, don't get confused. They have to teach in different ways, employing skillful means to get people to understand the path, to practice, to feel satisfaction in practicing. Then disciples will gain realization for themselves through enthusiastic practice. Perhaps you have not come to realization yet, and this troubles you. You're being bound by Tanha. If you wish to progress in a hurry, don't worry, it will progress by itself. If you plant a tree today, do you expect it to be fully grown tomorrow? Could that happen? Your work is to water and fertilize it. Whether it grows fast or slow is not your business. That's the tree's affair, not yours. You can stand there and complain until you die that it's taking too long to grow. You'll start thinking that the soil is no good, so you uproot it and plant it somewhere else. But you will again think it's not growing fast enough. Must be the soil again. You pull it up and try to plant it elsewhere. Keep doing this and the sapling will die. What's your hurry? Wanting something to happen in a hurry is tanha. If you want things to go slowly, that is also tanha. Will you practice according to Tanha or according to the Buddha? It's your choice. Troubles come only from straying like this. You need to employ patience and consistency in the practice of Dhamma. When you arrive, there won't be any Dhamma. You won't need to practice anything, and you won't need to endure or use patience. But now you are trying to practice Dhamma. You haven't reached it. You just use Dhamma as a tool. When you let go, there's no more need for patience or endurance or any other efforts. All of that is finished. You are Dhamma. Now you want to be something and everything is too fast or too slow. Where are you going in such a great hurry? You need to stop. Don't speak with tanha. Don't act with tanha. Don't think with tanha. Don't eat with tanha. But everything we do is with tanha. So when can we expect to meet the truth and attain realization? When will tanha come to an end? We keep on rearing it, feeding it every day, somehow thinking it will die in this way. It only keeps on growing. Think about the things you do. Why do you do anything? It is exclusively because of tanha. Think deeply about this. If you let go and stop the stream of craving, your actions will become steady. Whether you are feeling diligent or lazy, you will still do your practice. Whatever your mood, you just keep working. You don't follow your feelings. But if you only practice when you're in the mood, taking it easy when you feel lazy, this is just following tanha. When will you follow the Buddha instead? If you're feeling lazy, never mind that, just do your practice. If you're feeling diligent, practice. If you don't need to depend on these feelings. Following moods, practicing according to your whims, you are not bowing to the Buddha. If you are bowing to the Buddha, laziness will not stop you from practicing. How long do laziness or diligence last in the mind? Take a look at their characteristics, their way of appearing. They keep changing, and you keep on going back and forth between them. Following changing impulses, you are constantly bowing to tanha. The great disciples of Ajahn Mun, as well as the Buddha and his followers, practiced with determination. In the Buddha's life story, we see how, after long years of austerity, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and made the vow, "Let flesh and blood dry up. I will not rise from this place until supreme enlightenment is attained." These were the words of the Buddha. We read the story in a book and think, "Oh, he really went for it. I should do that too." We may have been meditating only a year or so, but we feel inspired and decide to get right down to business. So we light a stick of incense and think, "Until this incense is burned down, I will not get up, even at pain of death." We use the words of the Buddha. We're really going to do it. But it doesn't turn out to be so easy. We start to feel that 3 hours must have passed, so we open our eyes to look, but the stick is still quite long. We're sweating and in pain. Oh, but I said I would die rather than stop. So we close our eyes again, go through the misery of another 2 or 3 times. But the incense is still burning. Discouraged, we start feeling we don't have sufficient good karma behind us. Our thinking runs like this. We have this big idea to be like the Buddha, but how long and hard did the Buddha work to cultivate the perfections? After the Buddha was enlightened, he wanted to vanish, didn't he? He didn't want to teach people. Contemplating the way things were, he saw that the afflictions of beings are very dense. There's so much darkness. The condition of things even goes beyond darkness. Whatever one tries to say is not likely to be understood. Then he considered the 4 kinds of lotus. He saw that there were beings ready to be awakened, like the lotus about to bloom, and was moved to teach. But we are not at that level. Just think about the 5 precepts. Merely teaching this much, people will say they can't do it because they live in the world. The important point is to refrain from certain actions, but people have no restraint. Those who are in positions of authority and responsibility with power over others are usually the worst. There's no sila, no dhamma in the hearts of people, even though they may know all the words and can practice the forms of various dhamma activities. There are those who have studied in great depth and can teach on any subject, but their minds are not where their words are. So what should we do? The Buddha said we should wish for things that are appropriate. If people don't believe us yet, don't go thinking they are stupid or worthless, as some teachers do. Actually, we are stupid because we don't have the skill to teach them. You have to cultivate this practice yourself, improve yourself, make yourself really know and believe first. Through practice, you can develop the wisdom and skillful means to instruct others according to their needs. You can't just go trying to rearrange the world, forcing people to be as you would like them to be. Don't make a big issue out of nothing. All people in the world have a reason for being as they are. Many Buddhas have trained themselves here, putting down this burden. They didn't go carrying the world with them. So don't worry too much about this. Do what you can. Help yourself and help others to the best of your ability. Give up what you should give up and do what you should do. Don't worry about teaching the whole world to follow Dhamma. There's one monk who is a good example of this. You might have seen him here in the past. He used to come and listen to me teach when he was a layperson. He wanted everyone to be well behaved and was always pointing out how he felt everyone should or shouldn't act. I just let him be. Then he decided to ordain. He would give Dhamma talks, and he hoped to inspire people to believe in the teachings. It did not go well for him. I told him, 2 oxen are pulling 1 cart. If the 2 work together, the cart is lighter for them. Think about this. If 1 ox is faster than the other, it ends up pulling the cart as well as the other ox. How far can it get? If you were the lead ox, you would be better off slowing down to let the other one keep up with you. Pulling so hard all by yourself only increases the load for you. Wouldn't it be easier to let up a little so you're pulling with the other ox? He came back sometime later, and this little talk had gotten to him, because this was what he'd been trying to do. He wanted to train the lay people. On the lunar observance days, he would try to get them to sit up and meditate all night. Hey, sir, hey, miss, don't sleep tonight, we're sitting up. But they would be falling asleep in their seats or going to lie down. No one seemed to want to practice hard. They didn't have the correct determination. No matter how hard he tried to pull, he couldn't get them to move along at the proper pace, and this started to make him tired. When he was sufficiently worn out, I think he remembered my words. It seems I'm pulling a cart and I'm pulling an ox. Maybe I should slow down and let the other ox pull with me. So he came back and wanted to hear some Dhamma from me. I told him that I don't have Dhamma, only upaya, some words to speak. I said, when the time has not yet arrived, what can you do? If a child is born today and you want her to be grown up by tomorrow so she can help you with the work, she's not likely to satisfy your expectations. So what can you do? Obviously, you should care for the child and raise it patiently. Otherwise, you're just headed for madness. You can't have it right away. This is just Tanha, wanting, pushing, ignoring cause and effect, and struggling meaninglessly. In regard to livelihood, people these days want to do a little and get a lot, or better yet, do nothing at all. The whole world will raise their hands for this. The Buddha said, however, that it is necessary to be diligent in whatever we do. We should be aware of income and expenses. There needs to be some training, and there needs to be moderation in the way we spend and consume. But when we are playing with Tanha, there will be no moderation. Our income is never enough. It's as if we're giving money to a mad person. He could consume everyone's salary and not be satisfied, just like we were throwing the money into the ocean. So who can be satisfied with what they have? The mad person will just go and request more from whoever he can. One's thinking has to go a little deeper. I've considered this. For people who don't understand, it's really a profound matter. They get what they deserve. The meditation masters talk bluntly, expressing it like this: serves you right. Haven't you heard? People complain that we only want to talk about Dhamma when they are in such dire straits. What will you say to these mad ones? It's hard to make them see, as I've said, like telling a blind person about colors. We mention white, and they want to know, what is the color white like? It's like gypsum. And what is gypsum like? Oh, it's the same color as the clouds in the sky. And what are the clouds like? Well, they're white in color. Foolish ones just continue on like this until they get frustrated. It would be better to find out about the person's blindness, when it began, what may have caused it, and so on, and try to find a cure. We don't have to explain about all the colors in the world. When one day they open their eyes and see the world, they will know for themselves. There will be no more questions. This way is probably better. What will you employ to solve the problems and answer people's questions and get to the end of things? Especially with those who have a lot of education, there's nothing you can tell them. Sometimes we poor meditators will be driven to desperation when the university students come and ask questions. They want a quick solution to everything. You tell them to practice something, and they say they just can't manage it. Well, they have to go back to the beginning and endure until they can manage to do it. Believe me, over the years, I've been seeking all kinds of means to instruct people. Now, I just try to do what I am able to. Things that are beyond me, I will put aside for the time being. And there are some things I simply have to let go of. Some people are easy to teach, some are difficult. And there are some who don't need to be taught. They can realize the truth by themselves without much prodding from others. You can see what I do these days with the monks who come here. I'm not teaching a lot now. People who have the capacity to see don't need a lot of teaching. You can leave them in the forest. They will look at the trees and think, trees are like people. The leaves and branches of a tree eventually dry out, and such is also the case for humans. This is called the Ugatitanyu, intuitive type of person. Just staying in the forest, they can come to knowledge by themselves. They can see the nature of human life. They have this kind of mind and don't need to be taught very much. Other people must come to sit here and listen. The Vipachittanyu, intellectual people, need to hear analogies and comparisons to ignite their understanding. They can't be left alone. With some teaching, they can see. With the right instruction, they will come to have a change of viewpoint and realize what they did not see before. Then there's the Neya, a trainable person. For this type, you really have to instruct and train at great lengths, but it can be done. It's like in a group of 100 students, perhaps 80 will be able to pass, and this is the 80th. He can still pass and move along with the rest of the group and eventually make use of the knowledge he has gained. But beside this, there are people who are going to remain on the outside. Today, you must not do such and such. Yes, sir, but in a couple of days, they're back to doing those things again. Don't do that anymore. Yes, sir, and before long, they're doing it again. So you say, you must not do that. Yes, sir. It's yes, sir, all the way along. Eventually, you have to let go and release them to their previous owner. Who is that? It's karma. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, and you really have to give up and leave people to deal with the karma they've made for themselves. You have to stop trying to change them and leave them alone. The old karma is too powerful. You can't fight with the old owner. Don't forget this in your dealings with people. Sometimes people seem to develop little by little, only to fall back. When the truck gets to the end of the road, you can't try to force it to carry the load any further. If you're still not satisfied and want it to keep going, it will only end up stuck or overturned. You have to know your own abilities and strengths and be satisfied with what you can do. Otherwise, you end up as a hungry ghost. The world goes the way it will. We do what we can to solve problems. Still, the nature of things is that they appear in the beginning, change in the middle, and vanish in the end. Just do what you can, what is appropriate to the situation and your ability. Trying to do more than this is only creating a lot of grief for yourself. Think about this. It's not being selfish. Some people will say, "This guy is so selfish, he doesn't want to help." You have to look at yourself to know whether it's true or not. Don't simply react to what someone else says, but look to see what's going on with you. If it's true that you are being selfish, you can accept the criticism as valid. Depend on yourself in this way. What's the use of relying on someone else's words? If someone says your virtuous activities are no good, how will you react to that? It's not a matter of arguing or getting angry over what someone says about you. Rather, you have to be aware of what is really the case with yourself and measure the words appropriately. But these days it's a little difficult, especially for those in positions of responsibility. Perhaps the police arrest 2 people in a case of theft. One of them actually did it, the other is innocent. But when they are interrogated, they will both profess their innocence. Did you steal it? Oh no. And what about you? Did you steal it? Oh no. It's the same answer from both people, but only one is telling the truth. It might not be easy for the detectives to determine the facts of the case. One person is innocent and says, "No, I didn't do it." The other person actually committed the theft, and he also says, "No, of course I didn't do it." So what can the cops do? They have to make their own investigation without merely relying on the suspect's words. The minds of people tend to be crooked and tricky like this, so it's better to know yourself and to be able to believe in yourself. Don't be too ambitious. Know what is appropriate and what you can do. These days, I'm not so keen on trying to interest others in my words. There doesn't seem to be much benefit in trying to convince people. I'm here in the monastery, where this way of life has been established. If someone wants to come and look into these things, they are welcome. If there's a fire spreading in a neighborhood and some houses are burning to the ground, the firefighters will first try to protect the houses that have not yet caught fire. They can't do much about the buildings that are almost gone. Many are still standing, and there's more value in saving those. That's how firefighters work. If we try to solve everyone's problems, no matter how intractable, we are likely to end up running out of time. The first thing we need to do is make a good example of ourselves. Instead of doing things in a worldly or selfish way, if we do things according to Dharma, someone who has the right karmic conditions can take notice and have some interest in listening to our words. They will attract that type of person. Whenever Dhamma arises in someone's heart, it will benefit the world. Good people will appreciate that, but evil people won't. Some things you might not like, but worldly people will call them Dhamma. You don't see it like that, so you won't have the faith in their way, and they won't believe in your way. They will take delight in doing the worldly things you see no value in. In all ages, it has been like this. We need something to measure by. If everyone is good, there are no bad people. If there are no bad people, there won't be any problems. And without problems to resolve, it might be difficult to develop wisdom. Since I came to Wat Pah Pong, I've been thinking about this. With a monastic community living in the forest, it's become a place where people are forbidden to seek animals for food. I thought it would be good to have a protected spot like this, where animals can live free of fear in the forest, and the forest can remain intact. I thought it was a good thing, but still I met with criticism. What are you living here for? Did you just come here to protect trees? Is that all monk does? You're supposed to be renouncing all things of the world, so why are you so concerned about trees and animals? I listened to their words, but I felt some compassion for the squirrels and other small animals and didn't want them being shot by hunters. Are you raising animals? Aren't they wild animals? This isn't the business of monks. I thought it over. Suppose we build a wall around the monastery. So we did, but people got upset with me. My intentions were good, really. Then there were the village dogs. They came here and chased the squirrels. They hurt and killed a lot of them. This was very painful to see. What could we do about it? We needed to find a way to keep dogs out of our monastery. Finally, after many months, I realized my thinking was wrong. This is just the nature of these animals. If we could drive the dogs away, the squirrels would become stupid. When there is some danger for them, they become more clever and careful. They get their own kind of wisdom from the dogs being around. In this way, wrong is good, because it is paired with right and leads us to what is right and good. We examine our actions and consider whether they are right or wrong. When a carpenter is cutting wood, he has to measure his lengths. Short will instruct long, long will instruct short. The world is like this, all things existing along with their opposites. I came to realize that I had to let go, leave the dogs and the squirrels to sort things out according to their natural existence. And yet now, the squirrel population is thriving. They have become more resourceful and clever. So the problem was mine. I wanted to prevent the dogs from biting the squirrels. I wanted to prevent people from criticizing. But it's natural for people to have criticism according to their point of view. I decided I had to solve the problem right where it was. I learned to stop struggling with things. Living in the forest at Wapapong, there were difficult situations. Things troubled me here, so I had to learn to settle them here. Malarial fever was pretty serious, bringing me close to death for several years, but I was content to be here. Staying and seeing it through, you learn something. When your strength of mind increases, difficult situations and problems become less powerful. Why does their strength decrease? Simply because yours has grown, so theirs is less by comparison, even if it's the same as before. This is all quite ordinary. You don't need to think about it too much. Instead, you should just do what you can do. You don't need to do things that bring you suffering. If you're creating suffering in your heart, there must be something wrong with the teachings. The point of Dhamma practice is to make an end of suffering, so why are you increasing your suffering? We need to see where we are wrong. If someone doesn't want to listen to our words and we get upset over that, we are in the wrong. We're supposed to be practicing to be free of suffering, so why are we creating suffering? We are very mistaken indeed. Look at this point. You don't need to have lofty thoughts of Nibbana. Just look within. Where else should you be looking to conquer? Please consider this. That completes the book, Being Dhamma. Sadhu. Any questions or any concluding words, Longpa?
No, not really, but I did appreciate that the book ended on on teaching.
Yeah.
In that, because that's certainly one of Ajahn Chah's great contributions is his ability to teach both through speaking and explaining, but also through his example. And so that, rather than ending on sort of some high philosophical note, ending it on, how do we do this and transmit it and live it? It's good. It's great.
One thing I appreciate about Longpo Cha is the way he developed his wisdom. It's not always something that's apparent or readily apparent. Like he's saying, compassion for the squirrels, but then he realizes, it was at a certain, he had to let go, and actually the dogs coming in were making the squirrels smarter. And
yes, I mean, that's his ability to look at situations from different angles and incorporate that. That's really It's kind of a sign of wisdom. But thinking about the dogs, I also have a great kind of Lupa Liam story, where one night I spent the night over at Lupa Liam's kuti, and then I was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I hear this sort of bang, crash, and then bang, 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 crash, crash, yeah, and in the morning I asked Lupa, what was all that racket about last night? And he smiled, and he sort of said, well, somebody brought a bunch of rabbits, and they've been increasing, and they're starting to get used to living in the forest and getting by in the forest. But then the nuns have dogs in the nun section. There isn't any in the monks. He said sometimes the nuns' dogs come over and try to hunt the rabbits. So he said, so I set a snare for that, and it trips the snare and pulls, and it's like a kerosene can, beep, beep naman. It's sort of like a 5-gallon can that's empty. And it sort of falls, and because it makes a loud noise, and then the dog runs off. But it's still the sort of ends up sort of having to run back to the nun section with this clanking bucket behind it.
Isan people are really skilled at making traps.
Yes, they trap everything. They grow up, it's just snaring birds and birds and lizards and little animals.
It's like they have a trap for every single thing.
Yeah,
I remember seeing these traps. Any questions, comments?
I would like to have maybe a 2-week retreat where each day is a different parami taught. There you go. I think it would be, I mean, for my practice, the paramis have always been really special.
Mm.
And yeah, why not? Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah.
I had a question about craving. And there are certain cravings which are, it's like, you can tell it's immoral or it's against the precept, and it's very clear that not to follow. But there, throughout the day, lots of them liking, disliking, or wanting, not wanting, that has an underlying, like you can tell, it has an unwholesome root underlying it. But should we categorically not follow any of them? For instance, like choosing food, right? There's a little bit of craving in what you choose. Like, should we say, no, I'm never going to choose what I like?
Well, the thing is the more you start looking at it with that kind of lens, the more you get tangled up. Because you have to pay attention to the impulse, in the sense of how much am I investing in this? Because the mind flits about, and of course, part of it is liking and disliking, but that's why there's okay, if there's a craving that is clearly immoral, that's absolutely clear. But then there's also there's just sort of impulses in the mind that I don't really have much fuel, but because we start worrying about it out of fear, then it actually feeds the craving. So there's a balance there where you've got to, and that's where paying attention to the actual feeling of suffering, because the suffering in many cases with just sort of inconsequential interest and sort of flitting, a passing liking of something or just passing disliking, that doesn't have much fuel, until we feed it. And so it's better to just, you take note of it and then just not bother with it. But it's paying attention to that feeling of dis-ease or agitation or really strong pull that is compulsive. Then you're starting to see how craving is working. Otherwise, it's because it's the liking and disliking is a natural part of perception, and of course there's a very fine line between liking something and then jumping full feet into it, both feet into the desire. So, but it's the impact that it has on the mind that is more telling.
Very helpful. But could I ask a follow-up? So, for instance, I'm walking through the line and I see a dessert, and I'm like, oh. Or if walking through the meal line, if you see a dessert and you like it, then there's a choice of either taking it or not taking it. And I've been noticing that the more I take it, then the next day the same thing, it comes again and again. So I was like, should I just say no dessert? But then it's also harsh to say,
you can do that and see what happens. Or you can just sort of exercise, only one dessert a day, and then just so make it so you've got fewer choices, and you're stuck with your choice, and so that it goes with especially with food is a really good. That's why the Buddha said in terms of the nutriments. When one understands the kind of craving, sensual, the desire that we have for the sense bases, then we start to we understand the nature of that craving, and seeing that clearly is a basis for one's return. I mean, the stakes are pretty consequential.
But I think a good point too is that it's the seeing it clearly. It's not whether you take it or not.
Yes.
It's like sometimes we think like, oh, if I take it, it's going to be inherently bad, and if I don't take it, it's going to be inherently good. But that's not the case. It's more like the way we're relating to it.
Yeah, I remember one time sitting with Lumpur Cha, and it was after Pinda, but we went to a little branch monastery, Bakut Wai, and he was already unsteady on his feet, and there was a rocky sort of it wasn't a very smooth road, so he didn't go an alms round. So I came back after alms round, and then brought him a bowl of rice for him to make his sort of ball of sticky rice, which that's in the northeast of Thailand. That's your staple. You make after alms round, and you make yourself a ball of sticky rice, and then the rest of your later when they bring the food, then you've got the food that goes with your sticky rice, and it's all eaten by hand, and you break it off, put it on. So anyway, he starts making his ball of sticky rice, and this ball keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it gets bigger. Yeah, this is normally he would say, don't make a ball bigger than what your hands are, but his was getting pretty big. And then he's looking at it, and then he gets about, okay, that's about right. And then he looks at me and smiles, and he said, I'm getting old, I can't pack it like I used to. It was very charming. It's just, yeah, he knew exactly what he was doing.
I was just thinking about like the difference between liking and craving.
Right.
Yeah, and Ajahn Sumedho's famous, I like but I don't want.
Yeah.
But something that's interesting to note too is like on the times when you maybe choose not to take something that you like, afterwards, how bereft do you feel? And you're making progress if you're not feeling so bereft, as time moves on. And then also, when there are a lot of things or when there's something that you like and it appears on a regular basis, and all of a sudden it doesn't appear, how devastated are you? Is it enough to go and seek it out, or is it, oh, okay, well, that's not here today. So I find it's just kind of interesting to experiment with that and see what the mind does when you don't make the choice to have it, or when it isn't there when you wanted it.